I now call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order at 6:07 p.m. Can you please call the roll?
Ms. Pearson, Ms. Chavez.
Here.
Ms. McCall.
Present.
Ms. Bennett.
Present.
Mr. Carpenter.
Here.
Ms. Haley.
Here.
Ms. Stanford.
Here.
Ms. Pearson.
Present.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. As we start, we'll now take a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. As we start each meeting, it's important to remember that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in an equitable, first-class education for a changing world. Before we go further, I would like to thank Kim Pedersen and Aaron Hill, who work behind the scenes to produce the broadcast. I would also like to welcome Superintendent's Student Advisory Council member, Braden Velez from Auburn High School. We're now on to the regular portion of the meeting. Item 2A is meeting minutes from October 7th, 2025. Are there any changes, corrections, or additions to the meeting minutes? If not, they will be accepted as submitted. Thank you. Ms. Stanford will now lead the Stakeholders Committee.
Thank you. It's now time for the Stakeholders Committee portion of the meeting tonight. Let's start by showing our 12-month agenda. Who's clicking? Someone else is clicking. Our feature presentation will be from Maureen Kirschman, Director of Attendance and Community Engagement. We want to remind board members of the opportunities available to interact with our students, families, and community each month. Go ahead. Please make sure you check the board calendar on rps205.com on a regular basis for the most up-to-date information. Now let's look at all the good things happening in our district. Bloom Elementary hosted a block party to celebrate the walkathon. Students rotated through games, danced to music, and enjoyed snacks while families and staff joined in on the fun. It was a joyful way to welcome the new school year and wrap up the summer. 39 newcomer students at East High School took a field trip to Peak Fitness for a hands-on health and wellness experience. Students participated in machine exercises, a spin class, Pilates and yoga, and a fitness boot camp. The event emphasized the importance of caring for the body and finding calm within, skills that support student learning and well-being. Whitehead Elementary 5th graders took part in the Sun Hero program with Miss Illinois Teen USA Sophia Chi and dermatologist Dr. Amy Brodsky. Students learned about sun protection, asked questions, and each received a Sun Hero kit from L'Oreal. East, Guilford, and Jefferson High School bands joined schools from across Illinois for NIU Band Day in DeKalb. Students performed at halftime of the Huskies football game alongside hundreds of fellow musicians. Way to represent. Hillman Elementary celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month with a vibrant all-school assembly. Students enjoyed mariachi music, authentic cultural wear, and amazing dance performances by Grupo Del Bayo Maseco Cultural. Staff also held a door decorating contest. Whitehead Elementary also celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month with performances by Musicbed Cultural, along with staff members and students dancing the salsa. Former RPS student and published author Devin Palladino visited Jefferson, Auburn, and Flynn schools to inspire students with his personal story of resilience. He talked about the importance of students sharing their own stories. Devin reminded students that no dream is too big. Flynn Middle School hosted the 4th annual Youth Story Ledger. Students from Flynn, Marshall, West, Jefferson, and Auburn shared personal stories celebrating identity, diversity, and storytelling. Family, friends, and community leaders came to listen to these powerful storytellers. The arts were on full display at Auburn High School during the College Fair for Creatives. College representatives from a variety of programs visited to review student portfolios, hear audition cuts, and provide personalized feedback. Students also had the opportunity to ask questions, learn more about college arts programs, and gain valuable insight into pursuing their creative passions at the next level. RPS hosted the 14th Annual Academy Expo, where 2,000 freshmen connected with over 100 local businesses to explore future careers. With support from more than 500 volunteers, students gained real-world insight to help guide their academy selections for the next school year. Johnson Elementary students took the stage alongside professional artists from Opera for the Young and the Elixir of Love. The performance brought music, laughter, and lessons on friendship and forgiveness to life in a fun Old West setting for the whole school community. We are proud to recognize Barber for earning first place and Haskell for securing second place in the 2025 Rockford Public Schools Elementary Soccer League. A sincere thank you to our coaches, parents, and staff for their dedication and support throughout the season. Your commitment helps create meaningful experience for our students. Congratulations. History was made at East High School. For the first time since the 1960s, the E-Rebs played a varsity home football game on their own turf, taking on Guilford. Alumni, students, and families packed the field, enjoyed food trucks, and celebrated this unforgettable moment together. Johnson Elementary wrapped up their week with a fun staff versus student basketball game. The Jets celebrated great attendance and positive behavior referrals. Way to soar high and show your Jets pride. Barber's 8th grade students had the opportunity to visit Rockford City Hall. They met with Mayor Tom McNamara, City Alderman Jaime Salgado, and leadership from Rock Valley College. Students engaged in thoughtful discussions, asking questions about current events in both our city and nation, and demonstrated maturity and curiosity throughout the experience. Next up is items of note from our community partners. Community members gathered at STEAM Academy at Haskell to celebrate the installation of the Spark Youth Mosaic. Created by local youth with artist Susan Burton, the works honor the theme Birds of a Feather Flock Together and showcase the power of art and collaboration. Rockford Rotary and RPS 205 kicked off its 24th year of Rockford Reads at Constance Lane Elementary. The program pairs volunteers with 2nd and 3rd graders to build literacy skills through weekly one-on-one reading. The Rockford Promise Scholarship application is open now through February 5th. High school students can apply for the chance to attend college tuition-free. Don't miss this life-changing opportunity. Apply today at rockfordpromise.org. On our 205 vibe, safety only works when everyone's a part of it. Wearing an ID might seem small, but it builds trust, connection, and safety in every RPS school. Read how we're working together to make safety a shared commitment on the 205 vibe. Now it's time for our legislative news. Illinois is facing a $260 million deficit in the current fiscal year and a projected $2.2 billion shortfall in fiscal year 2027, largely due to changes in the Federal Reconciliation Bill, H.R. 1. As the federal government continues to reduce grant funding, the state is working to respond where possible. including through legal action led by the Attorney General. At the state level, current legislation attention is centered on addressing the upcoming transit fiscal cliff and advancing proposals around energy storage. The second week of veto session will take place at the end of the month, with lawmakers expected to return to Springfield again in mid-January. Working with our lobbying team, Rockford Public Schools continues to advocate for district priorities in these conversations. It's now time for our feature presentation. Please welcome our PS 205's Director of Attendance and Community Engagement, Maureen Kirschman, who will provide us an update on attendance. Ms. Kirschman, the floor is yours.
Good evening. I am Maureen Kirschman, the Director of Attendance and Community Engagement, and tonight I will be going through the fall update on attendance. Who has the clicker for my presentation? Just want to make sure that gets up there. Thank you. Just going to give her a minute to get there. Thank you. Joining me is Principal Brian Doring from Constance Lane Elementary School, who will talk about the incredible progress that his school has made with chronic absenteeism over the past few years. So this journey that we're on is, it's a lot of work, and it is not a quick fix. And at the start of the year, we set out to move the needle on attendance, not just through policy or compliance, but through building real relationships with families. And we're beginning to see a lot of that work pay off. On average, our daily attendance is up by 3%, which means that nearly 290 more students are in classrooms every single day compared to last school year. Across every level, elementary, middle, and high school, chronic absenteeism is trending down. It's a steady and sustainable growth, and it reflects the work happening in our schools every day with our attendance specialists, our parent liaisons, all of our schools teams, our families, our community partners. Every single person is playing a vital role in keeping our students connected. And before we move on to the story of Constance Lane, I would be remiss to not share that the information we'll be sharing was actually presented to the state at the Illinois Title Directors Conference. We were invited down to present on the work that our school district is doing to increase attendance and how we're building relationships with our community. And Constance Lane was a school that I brought down to highlight because of the amazing connections that they've made and with the gains that they've made over the past several years under the leadership of Principal Brian Doring. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian to talk to you about his journey.
Thanks, Maureen. Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and kind of share some of our progress and the journey that we've been on over the past couple of years. You can see that over the past we've really made some significant gains in lowering our chronic absenteeism rate. I think when I went to Constance Lane 4 years ago, I believe we were actually at 76% chronically absent, and we've brought that down significantly. And when we were running the numbers and looking at where we currently stand, I believe right now we're at about 30.5%, somewhere right around there. Not where we want to be. We're going to continue to work really hard around that. However, we're very proud of the progress that we've made. And I think one of the biggest things as we were reflecting on the journey that we've taken is we've really tried to do this in partnership with families. So instead of this being school being something that we're doing for them or to them, we're really looking at how can we do this with them. And that has been kind of really the focus of the strategies and initiatives that we put into place over the past couple of years. So highlighted here are a few things that we have done that we felt have really made a difference in moving this needle. And we've really focused on changing the experience that our students have, about changing their mindset about coming to school. And we're really proud of several of these things that have really been partnerships with our community, and especially with our Swahili population, which is kind of a unique demographic that we have in our building. It's this year close to 30% of our student population, and so that has to be a big focus in everything that we do. So we've done some things that other schools have done, the Backpack Buddies program. We've done family dinners where we've had families come in and we serve them dinner and sit with them and have conversations about the school and what they would like, what their vision is for it. We're really proud of our community garden that we were able to get planted and have a harvest this year, and the fact that that's really run truly by our families on our green space. And they love to come and then they will share that with us at dismissal and gift that to some of the staff. Our Saka Umoja program was something that we put into place to really reach our Swahili-speaking boys. That's a group that we were struggling to connect with, and they love soccer, and that is a language that we speak and we can share. And we had a staff versus students series of games at the end of last year after IAR, and it was brutal, and they schooled us, but they loved it, and they kept coming, and especially on the days when they knew they were going to have that opportunity. Our bike bus program is something that we started targeting our students that live at Blackhawk. That's a kind of a hot spot in our neighborhood that we had really struggled to increase attendance in. And so with some creative use of title dollars and a part-time parent liaison position, we're able to put that bike bus program into place. And we have several dozen students that are coming consistently to school every day with that program that otherwise we were struggling to make an impact there. And that has continued to grow. We continue to get donations through the local bike club that helped to start this with us. We just got a permanent bike pump that we're going to be installing in front of the school. We have a community member that comes and services the students' bikes once a week to make sure that they have a consistent ride to school every day. Rockford Barbell is a partnership we're very proud of. They're there in our school 2 days a week, and we've seen an increase with the attendance of the students that are participating in that, both because they want to be part of that program and also because it's an SEL intervention that we're putting into place and helping to lower some of their behavior and what might lead to exclusionary discipline. We have a partnership with the Music Academy. As an alumni of the Music Academy, growing up playing violin in that program, I'm very proud of that we have the opportunity for our students to learn to play violin and classical music after school. And that after-school opportunity is a great way to keep them connected with the school. And then some other community partnerships that we have through our work with Alignment Rockford as a strong school and part of that program. So really just kind of pulling back and thinking about what shifted, really thinking about this as a comprehensive approach within our school. There's no one thing that we can point to or, quote unquote, like silver bullet, anything magical that we did, but it was really deliberate work over a couple of years of integrating attendance into all of our systems. So we formed, when we were able to get the attendance specialist position, we really did everything we could to maximize the role that person plays. We were very fortunate to have a really strong person to step into that role, and she's really grown it. But we've also done a lot of work to integrate that with our other MTSS teams so that in every time we're talking about a child, attendance is part of that conversation and what are some of the barriers. Really focus on families becoming partners and not just participants. So we have a weekly attendance team meeting, and a good portion of that is spent in conference calls with parents and inviting them to be part of that conversation, listening to what's going on, what are the barriers, how can we try to help mitigate this. And that, I think, has really started to shift the conversation and parents' mindset around attendance and the supports that we're providing to them. We've done a lot of low and no cost celebrations. I mean, if you were to come out to Lane, you'll see one of the things that we've done that the kids love is we play music and they dance into school every Monday and Friday morning when attendance has historically been low. We do pop-up parties. Our student council, we really put it to them to work on shifting the culture within the school and making a place kids want to be every day. Our November attendance challenge is we're having a Starbucks party for both the classroom with the highest attendance and the classroom with the most improved, with quote unquote celebrity baristas. The AP and myself, we're going to go in there and make them little drinks. But just really trying to change that overall view of school. Working on a safer and structured learning environment through CHAMPS and some other things that we're doing. And then also, really connecting all this back to our message to families is you have to be here every day in order to get the high quality instruction that you need. Attendance is the number one thing you can do to help to be successful at school is to have your child here. And so in partnership with them, every single week we message out, hey, here was our attendance goal. Here's where we fell. When we get that, we have this whole school celebration. Here's what you can do to help us this week. And really just trying to listen to them as much as we can and partner with them and to remove the barriers that we can when that is a challenge. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Maureen.
Thank you, Brian. Yep, Constance Lane is making very, very large strides, and being in that building is you can feel that students want to be there. They are connected. They're connected with the staff that are there. They're connected with what's happening inside of the building. And I encourage you, if you've not ever been into Constance Lane, to set up a time to go visit the school, because it is truly incredible to see the work that's happening inside of the building. But we also have a really great work happening at other schools too. So here are a couple of highlights from some of the other celebrations that are happening across our schools. These pictures were sent in by teams recognizing students and families for their commitment, whether it is perfect attendance, showing up, showing growth, or simply just getting to school on time. Eisenhower had the opportunity to go to the Ice Hogs game. It was unfortunately on the day that the power went out. The kids handled it beautifully. They were great, but they did have the opportunity to go to the Ice Hogs game. Froberg does celebrations constantly. They are celebrating positive incentives. They're celebrating growth. They're celebrating perfect attendance, weekly attendance, to really encourage their students and families to be a part of the community at the school. Rolling Green does their celebrations constantly as well. She has students that she's bringing down, their attendance specialist, consistently on a weekly basis, and they have their celebration schedule cadence going, and this is one of the pictures she sent over. And then in the bottom right is Gregory. They brought apple cider donuts out for all of their parents who got their kids to school on time, because at the elementary level, we know that it is the parents who get their kids to school on time if they're in that line. So they had a big celebration and wanted to make sure they celebrated their parents. And they're one of several schools that have taken that approach of let's go out and celebrate our parents. Ellis has done this as well, and the parents were so grateful to be honored and recognized that we're getting our kids here every day. Their attendance specialist had talked about just very heartwarming stories of parents becoming very emotional. It's just that recognition that yes, mornings are hard, so thank you. Thank you so much for acknowledging that I am getting my kid here on time, because it can be very challenging in the mornings sometimes. So across our district, we are really seeing this shift. Attendance is trending upwards, and the strategies that we've built around engagement are paying off in very measurable ways. Schools like Constance Lane show us what's possible when families are seen and supported as true partners, and that's what we would like to replicate everywhere across our school district. So our next step is, of course, to keep doing with what works. Every school has their own plan. They have Tier 1 attendance plans, but it really is a one school, one student, and one family at a time process, because there isn't a silver bullet, as Principal Doring had stated. It really is a concerted effort for all of us to come together and to figure out what each student needs in order to be successful and what every family needs in order to be successful. And that's addressing, the aversions to schools, the misconceptions around schools, the disengagement that we might have from some of our families and some of our students, and then, of course, the barriers, which is typically where we start when we start diving into why kids aren't coming. So thank you very much for your time and continued support of our attendance and engagement work. This concludes our presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
So first off, I want to congratulate the principal on the gains you made, meeting with families and improving collaboration with your families. Outside of the transportation issues, have you identified any other overarching or prominent themes why attendance is maybe low?
You asked district-wide or for Constance Lane?
In particular, Constance Lane, because I know there's that collaboration with families.
So as we're talking with families, I mentioned trying to identify and remove as many barriers as we can. Every family situation is kind of different and unique. One thing that we're really noticing is time, whether it's just because of their work schedule or things like that, especially for families in our walk zone, that the school hours may not match exactly when they're getting home or able to provide, supervision for their children because they're working third shift or whatever it is. One of the things I didn't mention that's the next step for us is we've been working with the grants department, and very soon, as soon as we can find drivers for our routes, we will be starting a before and after school extended day program, where we'll have our staff there providing SEL and belonging enrichment in the morning, and then academic intervention and enrichment after school. that's another one of the challenges, but it also runs the gamut. I mean, sometimes we're talking about needing hats and coats and gloves, and so we have a huge stock of that. Sometimes it's food, so we have every day in our school office, we have meal kits ready to go home with families if that's the challenge. So there's when we're getting down to the families that we're continuing to work with, we're getting into really complex situations that require kind of individualized support.
Sure.
A lot of families in, the FIT program or things like that might be a real challenge for. And so it's kind of constantly going back to the table with them and what else can we do to try to partner with you. But I'm really excited about our extended day. I think that's going to really make a big difference for us.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Ms. Bennett?
I have a statement, not a question. Thank you for coming and presenting to us. Just one, I guess I'm going to call it a shout out of when I came to Constance Lane and toured, and when you're talking about individualized ideas, but also large groups. So to have a Swahili speaking social worker, so to have all of the students have access to somebody who speaks their language, understands their unique needs, to be able to provide individualized groups, all kinds of so many cool things to have as just somebody that's their person. It's just awesome. So great job.
Anyone else? Can I just have you talk a little bit about the bike bus? Because when we were first previewing this presentation, I'm so excited about the bike bus. We can't talk about it enough. I was hoping you'd have some pictures of it, but is there an adult that goes to Blackhawk on his bike, her bike?
Yeah,
and leads all the, go ahead.
Yeah, there is. So his name is Charles Wyatt, known affectionately by the kids as Mr. C. That's how he's known in the community. He actually, we got to know him because he works at the Blackhawk Boys and Girls Club, so he's intimately familiar with all the families there. And he then got a job in our school as a lunch aide. And then when we had this idea for the bike bus, and we were approached by a local bicycling club in partnership with Brook Road, and they kind of did this whole bike drive on their own. So the way it started was back in July. I think it was July. Yeah, you were there. We had 40 bicycles that were donated on a Saturday morning. We targeted a list of students that we knew were within our walk zone, mostly in Blackhawk, that had trouble getting to school, invited them in. They got a bike, they got a bike lock, and a bike safety course. And then from there, with Mr. C, we were able to create a part-time parent liaison position, and one of his responsibilities in that role is he comes to school about 6:30 in the morning. He bikes down to Blackhawk. He rides a route through and he picks up all the kids, and then he rides them up to school. And I rode with them, and I'm his sub-driver, so if you come over to Constance Lane, my bicycle is in my office, and that's why, because when he calls in sick, then I'm his substitute, so we can continue that. But riding with the kids, and it was a cold morning, and but the way that they meet and then they go to each other's houses, and it's not even him going up and knocking on the doors to make sure the kids are coming. The kids are going up and knocking on each other's doors, like, hey, you got to get up and come to school. And then they have this very tight and kind of unique identity that they've built as this little club within the school, and they're so funny when they pull up in the morning, because I'm always at the front door greeting all the kids, and they come whipping around the side of the school, and they're like, turning and doing slides into the bike rack, but they take a lot of pride in that and the way that they help each other. And I wish I'd taken a picture, but we were coming across the bridge, the train bridge right there by Bear Recycling Plant, because they come down College, and one of the first graders can't make it up that hill. And there was a fifth grader who can sometimes be a challenge, but in that moment, she got off her bike and just walked next to that little first grader so she didn't have to go up that hill by herself. And I think those are the moments, we're really working on these big strategies and systems and all of that, but it's those little moments that I think really show the power of the work that we're doing and the change where it really meets individual student and family need.
Great.
So.
That's great. It's a great story. I appreciate you thinking outside the box and putting something like that in place for our students. It's great.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. McCall.
Thank you again for your presentation. And I just want to make mention that the bike bus and Mr. C were highlighted on a news special sometime last week. I can't recall which station or anything, but it was very good. In fact, I'm sure if you just Google it, it'll pop up, but it was really good. And just keep up the good work. You know, Constance Lane is a school that's near and dear to my heart. So just thank you for all that you guys are doing. And I agree with Maureen, you know, one school at a time, one family at a time, one kid at a time. If it's working good there, let's duplicate it everywhere else. So thank you.
Ms. Chavez?
Yeah, I have a question. What is going to be, what's the plan or the solution for like when weather gets really bad? Like, yeah, challenging. What are your guys' plans?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about that. So in our spirit of trying to meet all the different needs that we have, when we built the list for our before school program, the first kids that we reached out to, because it's a targeted invitation right now until we can fill all the seats, were the students who are in the bike bus program, so we can continue to provide that for them. As long as the weather, I mean, even when it's cold, we know our students are still expected to get to school. So as long as the ice and snow are not prohibitive, we're going to continue to try to run that program, and even if it's for a couple of kids, because our families have come to depend on it. We've made sure the kids have hats and coats and gloves and all of those things. But hopefully most of them will be part of our before school program that's starting really soon, so that we can continue that support for the families. But we want to run both because we know that that's a very early pickup, and that might be prohibitive for some families, but they can still get their child down to the play structure where we meet in the morning at 7:10 to get to school on time that way. So we're going to continue to run it as long as weather's permitting.
Ms. Pearson?
I just want to simply say thank you. You have gone above and beyond to decrease the high absenteeism, and that is very much appreciated. I think it was Channel 17. That's the channel I watch all of the channels. But that particular day, I was watching Channel 17. So I believe that was the channel that highlighted that. And it was very encouraging. And that is what it's going to take for our students, our scholars, to be academically successful. If you can heal the symptom, then the health improves. So thank you very much for the work that you're doing. I don't think we pause enough to say thank you to the principals and their team. So kudos to you and your team for the efforts that you've made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bennett?
Just one more thing to add. Earlier this year, Mayor McNamara, President Carpenter, and I met to kind of discuss partnerships between the two of us. What are things that the city can do? What are things that RPS can do, and both in between? And one area we talked about was shoveling, plowing, sidewalks, all of those things. So we brought the information back to facilities team, RPS, Dr. Jarrett, and so moving forward, going into the winter now, if there are areas that are consistently not plowed, sidewalks that are consistently not shoveled, sidewalks that are damaged, any of those things, they want to know right away, especially if it's something that's consistent, to make sure that they're doing their part to assist us, right? We have entire teams on our end too, but this goes for Constance Lane, is in addition to all of our schools that we have children that are trying to walk in streets and things that come to school wet and all those things too. So just to be mindful if something is happening, you're hearing something, like please let facilities know so that way it can get addressed. And that's already the commitment the city has made. So shout loud to make sure we get it resolved, okay?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, just a couple more items for us. Internal, external news. A big congratulations to our very own Kimberly Haley. She is a leadership class graduate from the Belvedere Area Chamber of Commerce. We're proud to celebrate your accomplishments and the positive difference you continue to make over in Boone County. In September, Amy Prozis, grant budget Director, and Maureen Kirschman, Director of Attendance and Community Engagement, were invited to share RPS's innovative approach to aligning funding, family engagement, and attendance initiatives at the Illinois Association of Title Directors Conference. Their presentations highlighted how RPS is leveraging resources in new ways to strengthen student success and community partnerships. And board reflections. Do any board members have anything they want to share regarding any events you've attended or interactions you've had in the community? Ms. Bennett.
I was asked to be the mystery reader at Westview this past week. So I got to read to a first grade class, and I cheated and brought 2 books. I was supposed to only bring 1 book, but I read 2 books. And so there was a segment to read the books, and then also they were allowed to ask me questions, whatever questions they wanted. And the first question was, what decade was I born in? And I'm like, well, so I looked at the teacher like, is there a reason why everyone wants to know? And they're like, we've learned about all the decades. So they had a dressing up theme through the week. So when I said the 80s, they were like, wow, we don't know anyone from the 80s. So that was a good time. But it was very exciting. So the teacher is having it that each Friday a mystery person can come in. So somebody from the community, a parent, a caregiver. My brother-in-law is a firefighter. He's going to go and he's going to dress in his firefighter stuff. But it's very exciting because you like hide behind a thing and they all have to guess who the person's going to be. Everybody thought I was someone's mom, but like in theory, a child would say, hey, that's my mom. But so it was very, very lovely, like the best way to start a Friday. So yeah, shout out to Westview, doing very fun things there.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes, actually, just today I attended the chamber, had an event. They partnered with Alight Solutions, and it was end of session. And it was a lot of good information regarding bills. As everyone knows, those are very lengthy. I kind of lean on Dr. Jared to pick those bills apart if I have questions. But it was really good to gain information. One in particular had to do with the juvenile individuals, and so it was really good information. It's good to see collaborative efforts in our community to bring information, and that is particular bills that will ultimately affect our scholars is something that we should really keep our hand on the pulse with. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, that concludes our report.
I'll just, real quick, just wanted to report. Ms. Haley and I went to this is not a community thing, I guess, but it's a school board thing. We went to the division meeting for IASB for the Kishwaukee division. It was held at St. Charles, Lincoln School in St. Charles. And it just, a couple things that they brought up for board members' information is there's a community, online community on the IASB website that you can access with your member account at community.iasb.com, and it's got a bunch of, information about for board members, conversations and stuff on there. So I'll send that to you. And then the other thing that they presented was, I guess the theme was, presenting good things for school districts, presenting good things. And the main thing that was presented, I guess, or the first thing was from St. Charles School District 303, and they had come up with a new cell phone plan, and it was pretty interesting the way they came up with it through, it wasn't just, it's not the plan that was the interesting thing, it was the way they did it through community collaboration with parents, teachers, staff, all the stakeholders, students, everybody who's interested in that important topic. And it was something that, the interesting thing, like I said, was the collaboration, the time, the dedication that they put into coming up with it over the course of a year or so, and it's been pretty successful the way, based on the collaboration that that was used to come up with it. So I think that I will also send that, just the presentation out, because again, it's not about the plan itself, it's about how they came up with the plan that's interesting. So just wanted to report back on that. Thanks.
Ms. Bennett.
I just have one more thing to add. Regarding the East Guilford game, I know quite a few of us attended the game, which was lovely to do, but My mom is a graduate of 76, and so she's never attended a game at East before. So she was walking in the crowd, and people are shouting her name. It was like absurd. There was somebody from her football team the year she graduated, and he had his actual jersey on with his like Letterman jacket. So the thing I wanted to mention about it was the like how open the school was, so that people could see the field house, be a part of the school. Most times when you attend a game, like it's off limits and you have to be a part of the field. And so that was really cool to be able to go in and like my mom look at her yearbook that's all digitized, like very cool, like community experience, not just a part of the game. So great job to East.
I was at that game as well, and I had opportunity to talk to the AD before the game, and he's so excited about the field and the track and just the possibility of having games there and track meets, and he's got all kinds of ideas about how he can continue to make that happen. So I support him fully. I think it's a great thing. Okay, anyone else? That would be it for us.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3, Stakeholders Committee. No, moving on to item 4, Performance and Monitoring Committee. Ms. Bennett will lead us in the Performance and Monitoring Committee.
Okay, good evening. We have 2 presentations tonight. The first one is going to be from a good portion of our schools team. So we have the State Accountability 2025 school year results.
Okay, and I'm going to kick us off and hand it over to the schools team, just waiting for the slides to come up here. While we're waiting for the slides to come up, I'll give a little bit of background. The first part of the presentation is going to talk about how our district is comparing to where we were pre-pandemic on 3rd through 8th grade literacy, with an emphasis on 3rd grade literacy. We focused on freshmen on track, middle school on track, and high school graduation rate. And we're going to be looking in this first section about how we compare to where we were pre-pandemic, just after the pandemic, 2021, and how we compare to the state average and some of the progress we're making. And we'll highlight some of those gains that we've made. The second part of the presentation that the schools team is going to take is going to really talk about the progress our middle schools, high school, or middle schools, elementary schools, and special programs have made on their journey. Then we'll pivot to high school progress and close it out with something that we've been reporting for a couple years that's an internal measure called our Rigor Index, and talk about some of the progress our high schools have made with access to dual credit and advanced placement courses for students. So I'm going to take the first part. Our schools team will take the second and third part. So with that, we'll get moving here. Just a quick highlight. We're making gains on the state average in all core metrics right now. Our graduation rate year over year is up 3%. But if you go back to way back to 2011, we were at 61%, and we are now at 77%. So we've made some real progress, but even year over year, we're up 3%. And so we set a goal in 2021 back when we were at 66% to get to 75, and we exceeded that goal. So I'm really grateful for our high school faculty and staff for their hard work, and as well as some of the district support that was provided. Freshman on track was also in the low 60s, and we've been able to get that to 79%, a 15-point gain, 5% year over year. And then in 3rd through 8th grade literacy, we've seen double-digit gains in literacy. And again, I really applaud our faculty and staff across all levels for those gains. So not only are we improving compared to where our RPS was, but we are also making significant gains on the state average in all 3 of these categories. So again, this is a reminder of what we set for those goals and targets. For early childhood and elementary, we really focused on 3rd grade literacy as a metric that encapsulates all of the great work that is going on there, and wanting to see that improve to, at that point, the goal was 20% of our students being at the 70th percentile. Goal 2, middle school on track. We had really received a lot of feedback from faculty and staff that if we wanted to see high school graduation rates improve, it was going to be really important that we increased intervention and attention to tracking middle school grades. And so we built a middle school on track metric set a baseline and saw that improve very significantly. And then with high school, there are two key elements of the state report card. One is freshman on track, which is passing 6 of the 7 courses in all the core classes freshman year, as well as graduating within 4 years. We set a 75% target for both of those metrics. And here's how we did. We were able to significantly exceed the 2026 target in 2025 for our literacy levels. We were able to just missed the middle school on track rate. We were at 82%, but that's been a nearly 20% gain from when we started tracking it. So work to do, but really proud of the progress we've made. And then you can see the results with both the graduation rate and the freshman on track rate. Again, seeing gains that are really, really significant over the last 5 years. As we pivot to the next section and look through 3rd through 8th grade as well as high school, we're going to be using some comparisons. One is going to be always to the state of Illinois, and then we have some districts that have some similar dynamics to the Rockford Public Schools. Some of them are local, like Freeport, Harlem, and Belvedere, that are unit districts, large unit districts. And then we also have some large urban unit districts, U46, the Chicago Public Schools, which is one of the largest districts in the country, Springfield, Peoria, East Aurora, and Decatur. And so not only are we comparing ourselves demographically here to those comparison groups as well as the state of Illinois, but we also attempt to then compare with those groups with some of our key metrics. This is called benchmarking, and it's a way you can see not only are we trying to compete against ourselves to improve, but we also want to make progress in terms of how we compare with other districts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our team to start talking about zooming into our elementary, middle schools, and special programs, and there's some real exciting highlights to share. So with that.
Thank you, Dr. Jarrett. Heather Saltis, Executive Director of Schools, and together with Blake Hand and Morgan Gallagher, we'll be sharing some information, as Dr. Jarrett said, about the hard work that our teachers and admin and everyone supporting them has done to get some of our results and some work we still have yet to do. So we have 4 schools who moved to a higher designation, which I'll explain a little bit about designations in a moment. 3 of the 5 special program schools are now exemplary, which is top 10% in the state, and that's very exciting. To our high commendable and the higher range of commendable. And for some of you who've been watching meetings for a while or been on the board for a while, that's a wonderful growth to see over the last 8 to 10 years with special programs in general. They're realizing the promise that we had hoped they would have. McIntosh we'll highlight a little bit later, and then again at the December meeting. They improved out of comprehensive to targeted, which is a wonderful and exciting accomplishment. So the Illinois Board of Ed, really 2 things are basically measured when we talk about how well students are doing. We look at proficiency. How are they meeting the targets? Have they learned the expected grade level skills? And then how much are they growing based on students who scored the same the year prior? So looking at students who are in their 2nd, 3rd, 4th year of taking the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. So those are kind of the 2 big buckets. Each school, if you go to the Illinois Interactive Report Card, you can search our district, you can search each individual school, you can compare schools, and you can look at how schools are doing related to these measures. There are really 3 big buckets. There's academic proficiency, and it's kind of, again, how are students at grade level, how are they meeting the benchmarks, and that's broken down as described on the slide. And that's 25% of the entire report card for our K through 8 schools. 50% of the entire report card is growth, which is what we really emphasize, and our schools are all really rowing in the same direction about student growth. Taking a student, every educator, every classroom, I see a lot of amazing teachers in the room, I've known many of you, and taking those kids from day 1 until the time they take the IAR test and meeting them where they're at while also exposing them to where we want them to be for the benchmark. And that growth over time is 50% of the report card for each K through 8 school. And then the other 2 are chronic absenteeism and the climate survey. That's 25% of the school report card. And when you heard from Principal Doring and Ms. Kirschman earlier, you can see chronic absenteeism is an issue still in our district. And some of our schools that are underperforming schools, that is one of their bigger issues. And if you dig into some of our schools with targeted subgroups, which we'll talk about, you look at that specific subgroup, and chronic absenteeism, meaning they've missed 20% or more of the school year, is one of the battles that we're all working to get better at. And the way that Mr. Doring is going about it is the way that we can all model ourselves after. So English language arts proficiency, our data team has helped us with a presentation to kind of show you the increase for the different subgroups and overall as a district. There's an increase. The thicker purple line is the district as a whole, the 3rd through 8th grade increase. And that is to give you an apples to apples comparison using the new cut scores compared to the cuts applied to last year's data as well. So you can see the true growth. We have a few celebrations. Macintosh, I mentioned earlier, has a 14% growth, and this is language arts proficiency, this reading. This is towards the state in the number of students achieving at the benchmark level. Anything 9, 8, 9, 6, those are really great numbers. Barber, 12%. Conklin, IB, 9%. Ellis, 8%, and Eisenhower, 6%. And the same for math proficiency. As you'll see, math is a little more flat. And if you look at the comparison to state average, we can see that on the state report card. That is a more challenging area, and we have more work to do for math. We do have some bright spots with our math proficiency as well. Macintosh, again, double-digit growth in their, not in student growth, but in achievement / proficiency for math. Ellis, Barber, Bloom, and Riverdale. Similar to the slide Dr. Jarrett spoke about, did the same thing for you all so that you can look at comparisons year over year, 2023 through 2025, for both ELA and math proficiency, grades 3 through 8, compared to other nearby districts and also similar districts in the state. Wanted to explain a little bit for those who may be new to the school designation categories. As I had mentioned earlier, the top 10% of all schools in the state of Illinois under the model, the business rules for our school scorecard are in the top 3%, or I'm sorry, called exemplary schools. We have 3 schools in the top 10%, and that would be the 2 Marshalls and then also Haskell STEAM Academy. We have 7 commendable schools, which means although their overall performance isn't in the top 10% of all schools, they don't have any subgroups or other groups that are at or below the lowest performing 5% of schools in the state. And at the high school level, that means they have a graduation rate also of higher than 67%. 13 schools are targeted, which means the majority of the school would be in the commendable range, but 1 or more subgroups would be identified as being in that 5%. And when you earn a targeted designation or lower, you do have to have a state plan, and there's a 4-year plan to improve that the state monitors for that. The bulk of schools in the state will typically fall within the commendable and targeted range with the current rules. And then we have comprehensive schools who have an overall performance in the bottom 5%, or they have a targeted subgroup that over a couple of cycles have remained in that bottom 5%, so they become comprehensive and not targeted. And then we have 6 intensive schools that are schools that have been underperforming schools for 4+ years. So provided based on that context, a list of the schools in the district for you, so you can see which schools fall in which categories with the testing from last year. And I won't read the exhaustive list to you. We also are providing the information on our 3 charter schools year over year for you, so you can see what designations our charter schools have achieved based on their state testing. But as promised, we do want to highlight a couple of the schools that we mentioned, starting with McIntosh Elementary, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
So my name is Blake Hand. I'm Executive Director for Schools. I work with the Southwest Quadrant, and I also work with Westview Elementary and McIntosh Elementary. Very, very proud to highlight McIntosh Elementary. So if you look at some of the scores up there for proficiency, which Heather highlighted, some big jumps for proficiency, but also for growth. And they almost doubled their raw summative designation score for the accountability with the state. So they moved out of the bottom 5% in the state due to this amazing growth in math and literacy. And, you know, like I said, proficiency, not just growth, but proficiency increased a significant amount. And just some general acknowledgements for the school. Aaron Sahlberg, the principal, Christina Porzel, the AP, and just their teacher team over there has done a tremendous job. They work with using the CHAMPS program over there with clear, consistent expectations for students and explicit instruction engagement strategies in their classrooms. Also want to acknowledge a partnership that they've formed with the Rockford Park District specifically. So I wanted to give a shout out to Daniela Potter, Derica Davis, Aisha Ford, and their team that's worked over the past year and into this school year. They help with what they call Strong Start at McIntosh, as well as something called Tiger Time, which is an SEL support system they have, as well as lunch and recess. So in essence, McIntosh, do this partnership, is kind of like Rockford's first community school. Want to give a shout out to the finance team to help with budgeting. So they've made it possible so that the school is able to do flexible groupings across the entire school at each grade level. And also the facilities team and security team. This past summer, they did a tremendous job making some functional building upgrades in the school during the summer of 2024. So very, very proud of the school, everything that they've done. And also they'll be presenting at the Committee of the Whole on December 1st if you want to hear some more specifics about McIntosh.
Also wanted to highlight Conklin IB primary years program and share their proficiency, and shout out to the principal, Brad Smith. Prior year was Sarah Brenner, who's unable to be here tonight. She is now one of our colleagues on the schools team. Was able to hire her a couple of years ago, maybe I think 4 years ago now, to get the program up and running. She did a tremendous job leading the building for a year, and then hired Brad Smith and became the supervisor of the school. So shout out to them and the whole team. REA was a part of starting that school and kind of the redesign and allowing teachers to be able to choose if they would like to stay and be part of that new focus. And with any new program, if you remember Haskell years ago when they became a STEAM Academy, it's a little bit of an unknown for teachers. So we thank the teachers there who kind of took the jump and agreed to try something new. And that is now rolling up, I think, one more year till it's fully rolled up through middle school, and then that will eventually roll up to a high school international baccalaureate program with an IB diploma. So again, they were targeted the first year for 2 subgroups, moved to targeted for African American Black students in 2024, and this year they are commendable this past year with no subgroups identified in the bottom 5%. So hoping to see that continued growth. They also have the flexibility. They've adopted some different curriculum based on the IB goals. So we're very, very grateful to have added that suite to our special programs success stories. And turn it over to any questions first from the group before we move on to high school.
Evening, everyone. Morgan Gallagher, Chief of Schools. I lead the schools team and all of our efforts that we do with principals and school improvement teams with regards to school improvement. So jumping into high schools, just some highlights. This will just reiterate some of what Dr. Jarrett had mentioned. But we saw our graduation rate grow by 3% year over year. Our freshman on track rate grow by 5%. I'd like to point out, too, that this is not a random blip on the graph of the school performance. We'll look at some graphs of freshmen on track and our graduation rates, and we'll see over the last 2 years how we've had growth. I think it's really important to point out that it has been 4 consecutive years where our graduation rate has gone up from 1 year to the next, to the next, to the next. This is not random occurrence. This is due to some very strategic and intentional work for how we provide tools to staff to identify students that have needs and make sure that we target the right supports to those students so that they can be successful in their freshman year and thereafter graduating in 4 years. We have 54% of seniors that participated in either advanced placement courses, dual credit courses, or that are a Rockford Promise candidate meeting the criteria for that. And then also 3 of our 4 high schools this last year are commendable. If we were to look at our 4 zone high schools 4 years ago, 2 of them were comprehensive and 2 of them were targeted. So good growth taking place there as well. In terms of how our high schools are measured by the state, it's important to point out 50% of their score with the state is just based off of their graduation rate. And if you are a high school that does not get 67% grad rate or higher, as Principal Jim Parker at East would say, the Christmas lights turn off. If you don't hit that, you don't get points in any of those other metrics for academic proficiency or the school quality and success criteria. So really a strong emphasis, how are we tracking our students to make sure that they are on track for graduation? And if they are not, are we being very intentional and strategic for how we support those students and scaffold for them? Last year was our first year moving back to the ACT to measure ELA and math and science proficiency in our high schools. We had been SAT the few years prior, so last year represents a benchmark or a base year for being able to see where our schools are and to be able to set goals moving forward in the future. I would argue that this is probably our greatest opportunity for growth within our high schools, is having a very intentional focus on ACT now that we've moved to that test. Math proficiency, broken down by demographic, and the gray bar is representing the state average. Science proficiency. Again, a lot of opportunity for growth as we get intentional for how are we integrating the skills measured by the ACT into our classes. Benchmarking ELA and math for the ACT. Here's our freshmen on track, broken down by demographic. Again, this represents growth that we've had really over the last 2 years. But if you look where we were 4 years ago, we were at 64%. Look at the gray bars that represent the state average, and you can see that there's incremental growth for the state average on freshmen on track, but they're only growing by about 1% a year. Over the last 4 years, we've grown by 15%. So very much closing the gap in our performance relative to the state. This is our freshmen on track, broken up by school. That red line, all of them we see improvement, but that red line is East. East made it there, the first high school to get to the state average with their freshmen on track. And here's that freshman on track benchmarked. Moving on to graduation rate. Again, we're showing some year-over-year growth here, but we could add another 2 bars, and it would show that we have grown our graduation rate over the last 4 years by 13%. And if you look at the gray bars for the state, they're relatively flat. So again, closing the gap in our performance on our graduation rate relative to the state. This is what it looks like by school. So you can see pretty dramatic gains at Auburn in particular. They are the black bar on there, or the black line rather, pardon me. Here's a benchmark of our graduation rate. If you were to take time to go into this deck, I think one trend that you would see is that when you look at our academic performance, we've done better over the last couple of years than a number of these districts. But when you look at how we're performing better academically than those other districts, and you compare that to our grad rate, we have other districts on here that have much higher grad rates than us, but lower academic performance. What that tells me is that we're maintaining expectations for students in terms of the criteria for being a graduate. What is the profile of a graduate? We have relatively higher academic expectations. From here, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jarrett.
And Morgan, that was an excellent segue to talk about our rigor index. This is not something the state requires us to track, but something we think is really important. What the rigor index allows us to do is look at our graduation rate, and we disaggregate this by race as well. But we want to make sure that not only are our students graduating, increasingly getting to 100%, but we want to make progress toward as close to 100% of our students graduating with real measurable credentials. One obvious thing to shoot for is the 3.0 grade point average, which would allow a student to qualify for the Rockford Promise Scholarship. One area for significant growth and improvement is our seal of biliteracy. This is an area I believe we can make significant gains in the future on. It has not been enough of a point of emphasis for us. And I think with some of the great work that's happened at Barber already, as well as some of our bilingual programming, making stronger curricular connections, this is a real opportunity for us to seize on. I think where there's real excitement here is the fact that 54% of our students across the district either took an AP course, dual credit course, or is a Rockford Promise or Seal of Biliteracy. So if you add it up, if you give 4 different ways where a student could demonstrate rigor, and this does not even take into account a number of our students who are leaving with career certifications, which we've also seen significant gains. So not only do we want students to graduate, but we want our students to graduate and be college and career ready. So while this is not required by the state, it's something I'm going to recommend that we continue to do, as well as tying in with our career certifications so that we can make sure as graduation rates rise, that we continue to see ACT scores rise, as Morgan was alluding to, but that we can also see that these transferable credentials are being earned by our students at greater and greater rates. Our faculty and staff deserve a lot of credit for the growth we've seen here. One area that we've really taken off, and again, as Morgan alluded to before, if you go further back to like 2015 or 2016, we were less than 100 students were achieving a dual credit. Now we are well over 1,000 students that are achieving dual credit. And you can see as you disaggregate by race, this is an area where we see significant gains across racial groups as well as the overall student population increasing really significantly. The power of dual credit is the likelihood that that will transfer to an institution is very, very high. We've also continued to maintain significant gains in AP access, as well as success on AP exams with students earning a 3 or higher. So that brings us back to this idea of the school designations improving, which is ultimately how the state sees us. But we are also very, very proud of the work that we've done to increase rigor, graduation rate across the board with high school. And who am I turning it back over to close us out?
Yeah, I've got it. While we're on this slide, as I had mentioned earlier, 4 years ago, of our 4 high schools that are on here, 2 of them were targeted and 2 of them were comprehensive. So to see that move towards commendable and targeted is impressive. You get measured by the state on a 100-point scale. You get a raw score from them, and that's how they benchmark if you're in the bottom 5% or the top 10% or anywhere commendable in the middle. 4 years ago, our average score out of that 100 points across our high schools was a score of 19. Our score across our high schools was a score of 40 this last year. So they've literally doubled the number of points that they're getting as the state measures them on this scale. And a lot of that is due, again, because of their great performance with their graduation rate, which is 50% of their total score. An example school with our high schools, we have Auburn up here, where you can see that they've had growth with their graduation rate and with their proficiency. One reason I personally think it's important to show Auburn here is if you look at where they were 2 years ago, they were labeled as an intensive school. Again, intensive is a new designation, a 5th new designation with the state that basically says you've been in the bottom 5% for the last 4 years and you didn't get out of it. And if you look at Auburn's performance over the course of the years that they've been measured by ISB, they've been in the bottom 5% for more than 5 years. So for them 2 years ago to jump to a commendable status, but then importantly, maintain that commendable status this last year, shows some really sustained commitment to student outcomes at Auburn. Kudos to that staff and all high school staff and all KA and EC. I don't want to leave anybody out. So with that, do we have any questions from Cabinet as it relates to our high school performance? Ms. McCall?
Thank you. Can we go to slide 17? Okay, so I'm just trying to understand. So for 17, on slide 17, the math was 33%, and the math was 20%, and the ELA was 33%, and this is grades 3 through 8. If we can go to page 29 for high school, we see that it goes down. Is there any explanation, like, so for 29, so by grade 11, the percentage is only 27% and the percentage is 15%. So does that mean that, can you explain that gap, like why it went down? If we were proficient in elementary school and middle school, then when we get to high school, by grade 11, what is causing the numbers to go from 33 to 27 for ELA and then from 20 to 15 for math?
I think one of the big challenges is this was the first year of the state shifting back from the SAT to the ACT. And so 3rd through 8th grade, there's a consistent state test called the IAR, the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. And for the last 7 years, we've worked on the SAT. And frankly, I think we need some time to realign the curriculum. Illinois, previous to that, used the ACT, but many of these students were not exposed at all to we were preparing for the ACT, and then they made a pretty rapid next. So not an excuse. I mean, everyone else in the state had to deal with that too. But as far as an explanation goes, I think that is a significant portion of the concern.
I would just add, as an aside, I don't know if we have any East staff out in the crowd, but I'm sure they would remember that we also had a swatting event where there was all the students having to basically evacuate the school and then return and get ready for testing with just a moment's preparation for that testing. So I think that could have been a variable at East at least.
Okay. Just wanted to see, can we monitor that and see possibly, what is causing this decrease? Because how do you go from, proficient and then by 11th grade, it's not just a few points. It's 5 or more points on each section. So that's something to pay attention to and to see if we can close that gap. Thank you.
Vice President Bennett?
Okay, I have somewhat of a similar question, but regarding slides, so let's see. So freshman on track, so slide 31. So to say, for example, East had 89%, which is awesome. And then you fast forward to graduation rate by school, and they go down, say, to 75%, for example. So do we, I'm sure we do, but who/when, where would be the qualitative data to figure out the themes of all of these students are starting on track? 4 to 5 years later, the graduation rate has such a dip in between these two different variable points.
So one thing I would just jump in and say is East graduation rate for this year's graduating class was 4 years ago, and they were in the low 70s at that point. So East grew that number with that cohort of students. And so this year's freshman class, we hope, will be a record-setting graduate class. And that's why the state measures freshmen on track. But to your follow-up question, the importance of the case management of the students every step of the way is really, really important. So our schools across the board have very well-developed MTSS teams that are focusing on issues like attendance, which is one of our significant barriers, whether, to go back to Mrs. McCall's point, I would say one of the reasons that you could point to declining ACT scores, as I have more time to think about it, is we've had between a 60 and a 40% chronic absenteeism rate across the board in all of our high schools. If more than half of your students are missing more than 10% of the days, that's going to negatively impact student achievement. And so our efforts that we learned about today to build those habits in early grades and beyond are part of that. So whether it's, and Dr. Reed has really done a good job of popularizing the concept of BAGS, behavior, attendance, and grades, as well as the social emotional support. And so having teams of teachers and staff that are case managing. The district has invested about $30 million in discretionary budget dollars that are spread across our schools to hire different positions to meet the needs of our students. So some places have more attendance specialists, some have parent liaisons, some have Title I tutors. There are lots of different investments that are being made to kind of wrap our arms around students. And I think with the attendance presentation from earlier, you can see how comprehensive that needs to be in some of the parts of our community. The Lane story, I think, is very telling. So I applaud the efforts that our high schools have made to grow that. I also think as we continue to build those habits with middle school, I think that's another thing that we can do to improve this. So very complex issues, proud of our growth, but if we really want to see those graduation rates to continue to improve, it starts with early literacy, with third grade literacy. It starts, frankly, with really, really strong early childhood interventions and community interventions. All of that can play into this being sustainable for our community.
Thank you.
Ms. Pearson.
Thank you. So in regards to freshmen on track, if students attended school, say 60% of the time, and were able to maintain a D average, so they're not failing, they're deemed freshmen on track, correct?
I guess you're asking if there's a correlation between the ability to have a 79% freshman on track. 79% of our freshmen are on track. However, up to 40% of them may be chronically absent, missing 17 days in a school year.
Yeah, well, to keep it simple.
But to answer your question, yes, that is, so the criteria is passing 6 of your 7 courses and passing all of your core courses.
Exactly.
That is the standard that the state of Illinois sets for freshmen on track. That is correct.
Okay, so that answers the question in regards to freshmen on track. But as you matriculate through high school and behaviors don't change, that 89% of freshmen on track is a guaranteed decrease in the graduation rate.
I would say generally when you look at freshmen on track versus graduation rate, if you're a student who maybe is on track their freshman year, or maybe you're on track, let me use this example. If you're a freshman who's on track, passing all your classes your first semester, your second semester, if you get an F, like there's only one way you can go. You're either on track or you slowly get off track more and more over the course of years, depending on how many courses you don't pass.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but my point is, just because you're a freshman on track, your freshman year does not guarantee a higher graduation rate if you're declining each year.
The reason the state uses this metric in the school scorecard is because there is a very, very high correlation with being on track freshman year and graduating. But to your point, nothing is a guarantee. You still have to earn those credits your sophomore, junior, and senior year. But statistically speaking, if a student is off track their freshman year, the likelihood of that child graduating is very, very low. And if they are on track their freshman year, the likelihood of them graduating is very, very high.
It's actually 10 times higher.
Yes. So this was popularized by the University of Chicago and the Chicago Public Schools, where that work was really drawn. And so the state of Illinois looked at that success story and built that into our accountability system because of the importance of one leading to the other. But you are correct. There are no, just because, now our data has proven that out. As our freshman on track rate improved 4 years ago, we've seen our graduation rates go up. So that has happened, but that doesn't mean every child is going to graduate. There are obviously situations where that slides.
Thank you.
Could I just, I guess following up on all those questions, would we be able to see, like if I know you offer us one-on-ones, could we get like 3 years ago, the freshman on track record for these kids that graduated this year, or what the percentage was 3 years ago, next to the graduation rate, just to see
Last year's seniors, I can tell you where we hit the 77%. Their freshman year, they were 75% on track. The year prior, those students are only, so the seniors that graduated 2 years ago, their freshman on track rate was a 64%.
Okay. And then I guess kind of the same question on the 11th grade and the 3rd through 8th, if we could get, 11th grade English language, arts, and math proficiency, and then compare it to, 3 or 4 years ago, 3 through 8.
And that's prescient that you bring that up, because the state is actually going to be changing how they measure designations at the high school level in particular. Now that we have a baseline year with the ACT, we'll be taking the ACT 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and they'll be measuring our growth as part of how we receive our designations moving forward.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes.
The side-by-side comparison would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, we can do that.
Can I just add something? If you go back to the beginning of the presentation and when we looked at the 3 goals, universal goals, that we put in Dr. Jarrett's contract some years ago. I was on the board at that time, and I thought at that time, there's no way he's going to meet these numbers. There's no way in this amount of time we're going to go up 5% in all these categories. Well, we've done it. And I think that it is due largely, in fact, due to Dr. Jarrett's leadership and the programs that he's put into place, standards of practice, standards of service, school-based budgeting, MTSS, bags, ARI studies, everything that he has initiated on the larger end that trickled down to the schools. Of course, our schools are doing amazing work as well, but if it weren't for his leadership, I don't think that we would have made these numbers. And I just want to say that because I appreciate it, and it's been a long road, but here we are. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions from anybody else? Last call. Okay. If anybody does have specific questions, you can reach out to Dr. Gallagher between now and next meeting, because next meeting is going to compound. So if you have questions now, please make sure you do that. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brown for our fiscal year 25 audit.
And I am going to promptly turn it over to Jamie Murray, our Executive Director of Finance, who will introduce Mike Malott, who is our audit partner.
Good evening. As Greg mentioned, my name is Jamie Murray, Executive Director of Finance. I'm pleased to share that we have completed our 2025 annual audit, and I'd like to say that the process went very smoothly. And I'd like to thank our entire finance team and all of the departments that helped gather information and get it done timely and successfully. This evening, we're joined remotely by Mike Malott, partner at Baker Tilly, and he's going to present the audit findings. Hopefully.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yep.
All right. Great. So thank you, everybody, for having me this evening. Ooh, do you guys have an echo, or is it just me? Sorry. Hey, there you guys are. All right, so I have a little echo, but I'll do my best to power through it. So for this evening, let me share my screen first with the presentation. So tonight we're presenting to you the results, the preliminary results of the 2025 audit. So most of the information tonight will be what you'd expect to see. I'd expect to be no changes when we present here, but we'll be finalizing once the board officially approves at the board meeting in a couple weeks. So first, I'd like to start with my engagement team. So I am the principal on the engagement. My job is to make sure the audit is done, it's issued, and that everybody is happy with the process, and that we've made sure our team is doing everything they're doing in accordance with auditing standards and our own internal firm quality standards. Our engagement manager was Taryn Guiley. She's been working on this off for a few years and really knows everything in and out about the district and does a great job making sure everything's done. Additionally, Brooke Van is our engagement in charge, and she really does all the heavy lifting, boots on the ground, if you will, working with Jamie and Greg and their team to make sure everything gets done. As I mentioned at the beginning here, our work is substantially complete at this point. Everything is in draft form, but we don't expect any significant departures from what we're reporting tonight. In the very off chance that something does arise, it changes, any of our results, we'll communicate that immediately so that everyone is aware. So first, we're going to go over kind of the scope of what we issue as part of the audit. So all these reports are consistent with what we kind of complete every year, but I want to run all these down for those of you who have not seen this before and just give a complete understanding of what we do as part of the audit process. So the primary report that we do issue is the annual comprehensive financial report. That is the district's comprehensive, complete set of financial results for the fiscal year. And we'll get into a little bit more about our opinion and what we issue there and some observations related to that. In addition to that, we issue the Illinois State Board of Education annual financial report, which includes a number of critical elements. It's a lot of your financial information kind of put in a different format, but also includes other information that we think is important and helps them drive a lot of the decisions for allocations of funding and things of that nature. We also issue opinions related to your schedule of expenditure federal awards, which is basically a deep dive into your federal spending during the year. We complete work and issue an opinion both on that schedule as long with testing your major federal programs and issuing a report on your internal controls over your financial reporting. It's called our Government Auditing Standards Report. Lastly, we also issue an opinion on another statutory report, the Consolidated Year-End Financial Report, which is required by the Government Accountability and Transparency Unit. And we'll get into each of these opinions of kind of what we issue and what that means. So first, the big report, the annual comprehensive financial report, that set of statements, those statements, it's your information, it's your numbers. We help you guys put it in the prescribed format in accordance with all the accounting standards, but it's you as a district putting your information, your results out to the public to review. The only information in there that comes in kind of our voice as the auditors is the independent auditors report. And that 3 or 4 pages, it really tells the reader that can you rely upon this information. We intend to issue what's called an unmodified audit opinion, and that's the highest level of assurance we can provide on the financial statements. That means we've done a lot of testing and work around all of the key numbers and to ensure that the information presented, well, not 100% to the dollar, we don't go to the penny, but we do ensure that the numbers in there are a strong, accurate reflection of the district's financial health and performance for the year. So we'll be issuing that clean opinion as we have for several years, and that just means that information can be relied upon by you to make decisions and any other users of the financial statements. In addition to that, we're going to be issuing what's called in relation to opinions on the ISB AFR, the Schedule of Federal Awards, and the Consolidated Year-End Financial Report. For those schedules, we issue opinions basically that those schedules agree to your annual comprehensive financial report. So you think about a wheel, the annual comprehensive financial report is the fulcrum in the middle, and all these other reports are kind of on the wheel, and we say that, hey, these all talk to each other, and they all are in alignment and consistent with each other, even though they present the same information or similar information in just slightly different formats. So we issue kind of an opinion to say that this is all clean and relates to each other. I will take a quick minute to go over a few quick highlights. I actually don't have them in the slides, unfortunately, but relating to a comprehensive financial report, there are a couple of things I wanted to point out. First, that's a big document, so I don't expect everybody to read every single page, although I'd love it if you did. But I know you're not all crazy like I am. But if you are going to read any section of the report, the most important sections are the management discussion and analysis section and the transmittal letter. Those are 2 sections at the front, and they work in conjunction with each other. The management discussion and analysis, or I refer to as the MD&A, provides a lot of numbers, how did things change from last year to this year? What are the big highlights financially, dollar values of things? Whereas the transmittal letter provides additional context, a lot of non-financial context. What's the student population trend? What's going on from a construction standpoint? All sorts of different things educationally that you guys are doing. So it really kind of covers a wide gambit of things that provide context to the financial numbers to give people an understanding of what happened and what's going to happen in the future. So if you're going to read 2 sections, those give you your biggest bang for your buck. As you progress through the remainder of the report, it does get more detailed into some of the minutia. Including providing 10-year trend information, which is really valuable if you want to see kind of where the district has been to where it is now, and where it may be going in the future. From a financial highlight perspective, I don't get too in the weeds here, but I do want to point out that overall this year you'll see there is a decrease in your overall fund balance. The substantial majority of that was due to planned capital spending, but there was a slight portion of that related to the education fund that operated at a deficit for really the first time in a long time. This past fiscal year is about a $3.2 million deficit, which isn't substantial in the overall size of it, but it's something to just point out, particularly as kind of the prevailing headwinds in terms of revenue and uncertainty of funding, both from the corporate personal placement tax decreasing as it has last few years, the end of the ARPA funding, potential decreases in EBF and some other funding sources from the state. Investment income's been at an all-time high for recent years. We don't know how long that will continue. Fingers crossed it continues for a while, but as well as the big elephant in the room with federal grant implications. We just don't know how much anybody's going to get in the current environment. So revenues are going to be tight for all districts. So it's something to point out that as you look at your fund balances, overall, I'd say you're relatively strong in terms of where your positions you're in. But as you continue to spend, just be cognizant that revenues are going to be a little tighter than they have been, are coming down from historical highs that we've really never seen due to the number of factors that I mentioned were all high. Now they're going to come back down to where they were before, or even less than they were before. So just something to point out there. Not I would say a major concern by any stretch, but just something to point out that is a trend we're seeing everywhere. Whereas revenues are decreasing, it's just something to be cognizant of, and we just want to point that out is one of the one of the kind of the observations from the audit this year. On a positive note, looking at your overall pension stats, I always like to point this out because it's sometimes hard to see how the pensions performance can have impacts on the district's spending associated with it. IMRF kind of shifted into the fully funded category this year. It was over 100% funded, whereas it was about 98.7% last year. So it continues to increase as that plan performs really well. And then TRS, while the majority of that obligation lies with the state, that funded status has continued to improve in recent years, moving from 43.9% to 45.4% this year. What that means is that the amount of money you have to allocate, amount of resources you have to allocate to contributions to the plans will decrease. The better funded those plans are, the less you need to contribute because the resources they've accumulated are doing more of the heavy lifting in funding benefit payments. So it's always good to see if you look back. You can even see in some of the schedules later in the report, it shows 10 years of trend information there showing that your contributions in both those plans have continued to decrease over time. Even though your pensionable wages associated with those plans have gone up, just showing that even though you have more employees or larger pay associated that are pension eligible, your contribution requirements associated with that have decreased due to the improved funding of those plans. So just something I like to point out because it's always hard to see that within everything going on. Other than that, there's a lot in there. Obviously, I know Bragg has presented you other information over the course of the year, but just wanted to point out those couple of quick highlights. I did mention there's some other reports we issue. So one of the reports we'll issue, and it will be a standalone report this year. And prior years, this report has been standalone the last few years. Sometimes it's included with our single audit report. But this is our government auditing standards report. So while our opinions on the financial statements themselves really speak to the numbers and our crunching of the numbers to make sure they're accurate, we also do a substantial amount of work associated with your internal controls and your processes. We evaluate really all your key processes, your key controls around your significant transaction cycles. So payroll, accounts payable, certain revenue cycles, things of that nature. We really go around and make sure that not only that our things are being done correctly, but there's a process and a system in place to ensure they remain correctly in the future, such as proper approval, separations of responsibilities, things of that nature. Part of those tests, we identify findings. We are required to report those to you, and I am glad to report that we have identified no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies associated with our assessment of your internal control processes. That just speaks to your finance operations really running smoothly, having sufficient staffing to support, proper separations of responsibilities, things are being approved, things aren't getting through the cracks. We really kind of poke holes in everything, and overall, your team does a great job ensuring that those controls are tip-top. So something to be proud of, because most districts are not able to have those results. So this year, additionally to the single audit, now we've substantially completed our testing. We're wrapping up that testing. This is something we tend to do secondarily to the financial audit, but do complete. We're hoping to complete it simultaneously this year. Unfortunately, due to the government shutdown, federal government shutdown, as well as some other things that were occurring before the shutdown, that the federal government has not released its guidance for the 2025 single audit, which is our deep dive in the federal spending. So we've done all our work. We'll continue to finalize this, but we won't be able to issue it until the OMB issues what's called their compliance supplement, which is basically their rules for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025 through 2026. So just as a heads up, we've issued this report in previous years after the issuance of the financial statements. It won't hold up your financial statements, but we've completed all our testing. We tested 2 major programs this year, focused on Education Stabilization Fund and the Special Education Cluster, the IDEA programs. As of right now, again, there's some wrapping up we're going to do, but we've identified no findings to date. So we expect things to be clean in that regard. We just don't know the timeline to issuance. So just something to be cognizant of. There's no action to be taken right now. We really can't do much. No district or really no governmental entity at all receiving federal funding required a single audit are allowed to issue these reports if they're a 6/30 year end or after. So we're going to finish it up and then kind of hold tight until we're able to issue, and we'll keep management abreast of the situation as it continues to evolve. But just more letting you know that might potentially be delayed a little further than it has been in prior years. In addition to all the different reports that we issue, there's also a report re-release that's kind of all on our words, right? All of those statements and schedules and reports, that's all your financial information in different formats and focuses. And it's your voice, if you will, presenting this information to the public and to use the financial statements. In addition to that, there is one deliverable from us. It's our audit results letter, which is our communication as auditors to you as a governing body. We cover a whole wide array of different communications associated with that. It's a nice document. I think the best thing to say about that is if it's boring, that means things went well. The audit opinion is it's a pat on the back and the gold star to say, hey, we are able to get this audit issued. The numbers can be relied upon. This is great. The results letter is there to tell you of anything that went wrong. It provides you a lot of information about what responsibilities are, about things to be observed, any deviations from our plan, if there are any issues or challenges or major concerns that arose during the audit, any major findings. I'm glad to report that we've had none of those, which means that document, as it has been the last several years, has been very nondescript and boring and a lot of boilerplate to meet the required communications, but also indicative of the fact that there are no concerns that we have to report to you as we from the audit process. So that's a great thing to not have anything to have in there to discuss. So as mentioned, we are working to finalize the audit. We plan to issue after board approval. The single audit will be completed shortly after we are able to, once the OMB releases their guidance for fiscal year 25. Once we're able to do that, we'll be able to turn quickly and release the final reports. So with that, again, thank you guys for your time this evening. Thank you to Greg and Jamie and their team and Aida and everybody who works with us during the audit. We kind of come in, bombard them with a million questions and documentation requests, and they have to do their daily job on top of that, and then we leave. So without their professionalism, responsiveness, and preparedness for us, we aren't able to issue this report in a timely fashion. You're a very large district, and you have a lot of things going on, and it's a massive undertaking that takes 4 to 5 months of the year. So we really appreciate the effort and just the collaboration with your team. They do a great job. So I just want to thank them as well before I wrap up. With that, if you have any questions, I am here for you. And I'll stop sharing.
Any questions? Anyone? Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Michael. And I don't know if this question is for you or if it's for Greg, Dr. Brown. So on slide 6, mentions the two major federal programs being tested, the Education Stabilization Fund and the IDEA. I know we've traditionally been underfunded for the IDEA. How about for the Educational Stabilization Fund? Have we traditionally been underfunded for that? And it's
right. So that the Education Stabilization Fund is the federal funding that came through the ARPA program. So that program we've been testing for the last few years, and it will be tailing off and going away as all those stimulus fundings have kind of ended.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight.
Okay, so moving on now to our consent items. Are there any questions regarding letter G, H, I, or J?
Could we just get a quick overview of any of the calendar, the proposed calendar for next year? Just any significant changes and.
Yes, and Dr. Gallagher, when you do that, can you also back up to explain the process of how the calendars were created?
Sure. So over the course of the last several months, we have a stakeholder group of REA representatives, so their leadership, as well as teachers from across all grade levels that have come together with myself and multiple different departments, including payroll and HR, to review the process for how we would engineer the calendar. But effectively, and then once that was done, we also met with all of our RESPA leadership and made sure that they were clear from a payroll and HR perspective of any implications with the calendar. Where we landed, though, was, again, if I think everyone in this room is aware, we started the school year this year 2 weeks earlier than prior years because of all the HVAC work that we got done through Art Besser. I would say across the board, we've heard very positive feedback for the start of the school year. And our school year 27 and our school year 28 calendars are really kind of a copy and paste of the same manner in which we designed this school year's calendar, with a couple minor tweaks here and there. But by and large, the start and end of the school year falls within the same range as this year for the next 2 years.
You're good?
Yes,
okay. Did anybody else have any additional questions? Nope. Okay. If you should, between now and the next meeting, please reach out to our committee and we can make sure your question is answered. With that, I will turn it over to the Planning and Development Committee.
Thank you. Yes, so we'll be moving on to Planning and Development Committee. I believe Ms. McCall is going to lead us tonight.
Thank you, President Carpenter. First item on the agenda is item A, county school facility occupation tax. We have the first reading of the resolution directing the regional superintendent to certify the proposition to the county clerk of a 1% county school facility occupation tax for submission to the electors of Winnebago County in March of 2026. Dr. Brown discussed this at our October committee meeting. Are there any questions for Dr. Brown on this resolution? Mrs. Carpenter?
Oh, there he is. Okay. Yeah, just a quick overview. I know we've talked about this, but this would be the 1% sales tax to go on the March
March
17th election date.
That's correct.
And the sales tax can be used for facilities, I believe school resource officers, mental health.
Correct.
Or property tax.
Relief.
Relief.
That's correct.
And you discussed that, I guess, we appreciate the work that you did working with other districts to see what their support would be. And I think all the other districts in the school, or in the county, I mean, were supportive of putting this on the ballot.
Yeah, they are. The only district that has decided that they were not going to vote on it was South Beloit. Everybody else has either taken action on it or will finalize it next week. And so far, every single other school district's been a yes. I believe we're, including ourselves, if we approve it, we're at 98% of the districts in the county that have said yes to it.
Okay. And so South Beloit is just not voting, period.
They're just not going to vote. They've decided not to.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, the resolution will be brought to the November 18th, 2025 board meeting for a vote. Item B is to, bless you. Item B is to the resolution to approve the tentative 2025 tax levy. I will now turn the floor over to Dr. Brown to present the tentative 2025 tax levy.
Okay, most of what's here is information that we actually reviewed last month, so I will run through it fairly quickly. As you'll recall, we had three options that we had given you a scenario on. One was a flat levy that would not raise any new money for the district. Another would be for only taking the levy on new property, and you can see the amount that it would raise on that. And then the other option was to take new property plus allowable CPI, which is 2.9%, because we are in a tax cap county, and that would generate approximately $5.2 million. The other assumptions that we made, when we were looking at our budget projections that we talked about last month, we are uncertain about tier funding, going into next year. You saw in the legislative update that, the state's already looking at a budget crunch. And so we really don't know how that's going to impact us. And unfortunately, we probably won't know that until the end of May on where we're going to be there. CPPRT actually is coming in about 20% lower than we thought it was going to. And so, we're uncertain on whether we're even going to hit the budget numbers for the current year on that one. And of course, the federal resources, we don't have any idea on that right now either. You can see here, and we've talked about this in the past, the yellow bar is what they call the base funding minimum, and the tier funding and the blue there is what gets added on an annual basis. You can see there for 2026, we're at about $210 million. That actually carries forward to 2027 as the base funding minimum. And right now in our projections, we've got about a $10 million increase in tier funding for next year, which would be consistent with some of the previous years. A couple of other large districts fell out of tier 1 and went to tier 2 this year, which is why we received a much larger allocation on the tier funding this year, that $20 million instead of the $10 million we were expecting. You can see here the CPPRT spike up and down. We're hovering probably right around that 30 million now instead of the 32.250 that we had budgeted. So we're just going to keep an eye on that one, and hopefully spring receipts will pick up. This is just a summary of property tax revenues. You can see last year with the 2024 levy, which is the third one from the bottom, we actually did take CPI last year plus new property, and you can see the difference in the revenue that was picked up due to that. Consumer price index, again, we can take whatever the December for 2024 percentage is, 2.9% is what we're allowed to take under the tax cap laws. And then other assumptions that you've seen, kind of what we plugged in for some budget assumptions here for wage increases. You can see that we're projecting, hopefully, that health claims are going to come back down to about 55 million. We're hoping that they improve significantly over last year. Other assumptions, we're just really expecting inflation. You know, with inflation having run about 2.9% to 3%, we're thinking that that's a pretty logical assumption going forward. We do have some things that we are going to have to plug in with technology and buses this year. And so we've included that going forward to make sure that we're staying on good replacement cycles. And then you can just see kind of fund balance review, which we like to do with you guys. The fund balance at 6/30, you know, that was approximately where we were at. We'll update those numbers when we actually get the final audited numbers. Percentage of operating budget just shows you, you know, if we didn't have any new money coming in, how long would we be able to operate the district? And as you can see there, we can operate the district for about, you know, a third of the year, you know, if all of our revenue just completely came to a halt. You know, that's not a fantastic number. ISB likes you to be closer to that 50% mark. You know, we're hovering in between what they recommend, which is between 25 and 50% on the ed fund, which is where we really focus. Tax abatements, we still have a couple of large ones that are out there for a couple of individual businesses. Those are actually going to start to roll off here in the next couple of years. And then the multi-year projections, which we've seen, and I know these are hard numbers to read, but, you know, the big one is what we're looking at for next year. And, you know, you can see that we've got a pretty large deficit that we're going to have to work on tackling, you know, especially given the uncertainty on funding. So, you know, the recommendation that you know, we're going to make to you guys, and we're going to need some guidance back from you so we know what to bring to the December meeting is, you know, our recommendation would be to capture the new property and also take the 2.9% on the CPI. So again, the three options that we had laid out would be, you know, flat, not take anything. You can see there on the levy scenarios as he pulls those up. Scenario, the middle one there would be just taking new property, and then the third option would be to take new property plus CPI. And so obviously you could do something other than, you know, those options, but those are the three that we've brought forward, and then we're recommending option C. So we just really need some consensus from the board on what you'd like us to bring back for final approval in December.
Are there any questions for Dr. Brown on, I'm sorry, on the tentative 2025 tax levy? Okay, seeing none, the resolution to approve the 2025 tentative tax levy will be brought to the November 18th, 2025 board meeting for a vote. We're going to go ahead to item C.
Was that?
We need some guidance on what to bring.
Okay. Oh. Did you say it was going to be in December, though?
The final approval will be in December, but we want to do the tentative levy at the board meeting in November, and then the final levy approval will come in December. But we just want to make sure we have the right documents coming forward.
Okay, so we need to talk about this right now.
Yeah, I would talk about it right now.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Just a second. I'm going to look at the documents.
I mean, we can bring all three of them forward in November, and you can pick one as what you're going to approve as the tentative if you want 2 more weeks to think about it. But we have to have a hard tentative. Like, you're going to have to pick one no later than the next meeting. We're really hoping to have that picked here. But, I mean, we can bring all three forward if we need to.
Can you run through those, what the numbers are?
Sure. So the first one would be if we don't do anything, we just do a flat levy. We just levy for what we levied last year. So that would be a no new revenue increase. Scenario B is if we just take it on the new property that's come on the tax rolls. That's roughly 800 and I believe 66,000 on that one. And then the other one would be if we take it on new property plus we take the allowable CPI, that would generate roughly $5.2 million. So those are the scenarios. And you can pick something in between. If you're going to pick something in between, I do need to know what that one is so we can bring the right documents forward at the board meeting.
I guess what I'm just wanting to get an idea is what the budget, you showed $13 million in next year, I think. As
Right, and
projected
that budget scenario assumes we do see.
Do see this year, right?
Yep.
Ms. Stanford?
So I think for a long time, we've really tried to hold the tax levy flat. And just given the circumstances that we're in and the deficit that we face, we really don't have a choice. I mean, as much as we all hate to do this, we really need to do option C in order to just keep us from backsliding even farther into the deficit. So I would support option C.
One thing that's positive is because we've seen such growth in local property values, even with taking the maximum amount allowed by CPI, we will still see a significant rate reduction.
Yeah.
And it's not all the time you can see that. So our tax rates will actually go down very substantially even with that. So while individual tax bills could go up, spread out through all the taxpayers, the good news is everyone's home values are going up and business values are going up at a really, really significant rate, significantly more than we're going to capture. So they will see very significant rate reductions across the district, which is not ideal. We'd like to see both holding it flat and that, but we will still see significant tax rate reductions.
Yeah, and we do currently have the lowest tax rate of all the school districts in the region as well, which is a big difference from 7-8 years ago when we actually had the highest tax rate of all the school districts, and we now have the lowest tax rate of all the districts.
I would kind of echo what Ms. Stanford said. Also, keep in mind that with the challenges that we're facing with funding from the federal government, especially with the need to make sure that our staff is fairly compensated and to make sure that our students have what they need, I think that this year would be, I think it is necessary to take the full amount this year.
Ms. Pearson? I'm sorry, Ms. Bennett, then Ms. Pearson.
You can go ahead. Oh, okay. So if we take option C, and when you look at the budget and the still significant deficit that we have, what would be our plan to address that large deficit in addition? Because as you know, I have always voted no to raise the levy. In Subdistrict D, it is very important to my constituents that the levy stays flat, and that is the only feedback I get from my subdistrict. So in the understanding of that, if we were to go with option C, what would be in addition to that plan to make sure that we are coming at this of all fronts, not just one specific way to address it?
Sure, great question. And you're going to see a full report in January from the work that we're doing with DMG PRISM work. That's really going to identify a lot of work. But I'm also going to talk and give you a presentation at the December meeting of some of the things that we're actually working on for belt tightening, just to kind of preface what I think you're going to see coming out of DMG. We have a lot of work to do. I'm just going to be very honest with you. And given the uncertainty, especially with federal funding and a lot of those kinds of things and what we think might be coming down from the state, we have to look at ways to trim our spending. We just absolutely have to do that. And I can't tell you 100% what that looks like right now. I know that we're working on a lot of different things, You know, we have a lot of, you know, vacancies in the district that we have to contract out for, you know, working on ways to potentially figure out, like, how can we fill those vacancies so we're not, you know, having to pay overloads plus pay for contracted services for outside agencies that are more expensive than being able to hire people. Like, we're working on all those types of things right now, but we have to close that budget gap. You heard tonight from Mike, you know, that, you know, we did have a deficit in the ed fund, you know, this year.
Mm-hmm.
It affected our financial profile score. We went from a 3.8 down to a 3.55 in our financial profile score. We're still in recognition status, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to get our hands around this, because we can't continue to just deficit spend. It's not a workable solution, and you can't just keep asking taxpayers for more money when you're not willing to tighten the spending too.
Agreed, and I think even all the conversations of us talking about federal funding and all the uncertainty, like, all of our families are experiencing that too, right? And that's their everyday life, right? All the funding that we know that food insecurity, all the things that are currently our families are experiencing. So to say one of our large things that we're banking on is more responsibility from our families, I have a hard time with that. But I understand the situation. It's not great for anybody. I understand that, but I'd be remiss if I just didn't say both opinions. So.
And through our PRISM work, we'll bring you options to bring a balanced budget. Obviously, the board will have to weigh what the pros and cons are of that, but we are we will absolutely commit to bring you options for a balanced budget, and that's our goal, because we believe that the problem with not having a balanced budget at the end of the budget cycle is then it's just a bigger hole every year after that. It becomes you don't just put it off for a year. If you end the year with a $5 million deficit, then more than likely the next year will be a $15 million deficit. So deficit spending is not something we believe is a good practice. And so we will be providing you options for a balanced budget. And the PRISM work that we have been talking to the board about has audited all of our district initiatives. And the way it works is we look at everything that is not contractually required, and all of that is under scrutiny. And we will give you the results of that and our recommendations. And we believe that we will find the necessary recommendations and bring that forth to the board. And then it will be up to the board to look at what we're proposing and work with us to help us determine what the best course of actions. Ideally, we'll probably bring you a recommendation, but also some flexibility within that recommendation so we can enlist your judgment in it. I think we have found that by discussing the budget over multiple months in small bite-sized chunks, we found that it's much easier for us to understand a $550 million budget if we break it into small digestible pieces. So the PRISM project will be similar. We'll have lots of recommendations that will come out of that, and we'll be definitely working with the board to enlist your wisdom in what the best way to get that $13 million projected budget. Obviously, the other thing I will add is we don't have a crystal ball, and we have to budget very conservatively at this point, and some of those things could get better, and some of those assumptions could get worse. And so this could be $2 million more by the time it comes time to do that, or it could be less. We're basing things on massive swings in healthcare, a few percentage increase or decrease in our healthcare fund. If you think about a $75 million healthcare fund, 2% of that's $1.5 million, one way or the other. And and those are not things that Greg or anyone knows exactly what they will be. So we have to kind of put pretty conservative assumptions in. So the combination of how we make assumptions and the cuts we bring forward will all be part of a collaborative process over the next 6 or 7 months to hand over a balanced budget to the board for your vote. And you can rest assured for all of the sub-districts that you represent in the district that we will not provide a tax increase only, but rather we will be focused on providing options to make sure the cuts are there as well. But cuts that have minimal impact on students will be our goal.
Ms. Pearson?
So it's really difficult in this time, it seemed like we're kind of backwards in our decision making, and I think one of the issues is, the budget is like a year ahead of schedule. There's other contributing factors, but it's really difficult to support C with, it's like a double-edged sword, like how, at a time like this, when families are trying to figure out how to eat, to now hit them with a property tax, no matter a promise or further discussion based on what we learned from PRISM when I'm still convinced that we could have done things differently to not be in such a strenuous position. So it's really difficult to support the C option when there's so many other needs to be met. This is a major concern with the constituency. And I don't know, what we can pull and rearrange to try to maintain it flat, but it's difficult to, I'm not saying that I wouldn't necessarily support option C, but I'm very reluctant to do so. So give us some more thought and see what we can come up with.
Mr. Carpenter.
I know that there are difficult times right now for families, and one thing I would just mention is that the school district does provide support for those families by providing resources for food for kids and in difficult times. And so, among other things, that the school's there for families during difficult times, and all those things do cost money. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, the food is just one of the items. We still, there's a threat on healthcare. We could go down an entire list of, how this could negatively impact our constituency. So the food was just one of the items. So we're faced with, and everyone know, your personal budget, our own personal budgets, I've had to adjust. So I can imagine those families that feel like they don't have a budget to work with. They just have to move around money. So it's difficult is what I'm saying. So there's multiple factors that we need to consider when we make this decision is my point. Thank you.
Ms. Stanford? I'm sorry, Dr. Jarrett, then Ms. Stanford.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ms. Stanford.
Dr. Brown, for say a household that's valued at $200,000 a home, what's the 2.9% increase dollar-wise going to mean to their tax bill?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can get you that information.
Yeah, that would be something, that'd be good to know.
Yeah, I don't want to just take a swag. I think I know what it is, but I'm not, I don't want to give you a bad number.
That would be helpful.
Yep.
And could you also do just ranges of houses, right? Like all the different, just like a general range of what, majority of homes are, kind of just a range. Thank you.
Yep, can do that.
Ms. Haley?
Would it be, would you be able to also look at the variations, the potential of looking at maybe 2% CPI as opposed to 2.9 or maybe 1.5 or?
Right, yeah, we can do that. Yep. I can give you a whole bunch of them, but somebody's going to have to make a decision on the next board meeting on what we're bringing forward for December. So I can give you a bunch of stuff, but you're going to have to make a decision.
I would, I guess you suggest you can bring a couple options.
I will. I'll bring some options. I'll give you like, you know, like some different ones in between, and then you can pick and choose. But you have to pick next time. So you can't punt next time. You got to pick.
Probably bring new property, bring the full CPI, and then bring like half of the CPI.
Yeah, I will. I can. It's pretty easy once you build the model to show up for like what a 1% would be, or a 1.5, or a 2, or a 2.5, and a 2.9. So we'll bring them forward, but you have to promise me you're going to pick. So
There's
all right.
We will.
Okay.
So the resolution to approve the 2025 tentative tax levy will be brought to the November 18th meeting for a vote.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, item C is the Inspira Cobra Administrator. Administration recommends that the district approve an amendment to the existing contract with Inspira. The district's current administrator for the flexible spending account to include Cobra administration services effective November 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028 to align with the district's fiscal year budget. Are there any questions for Ms. Crowder for the Inspira Cobra administrator? Okay, seeing none, the amendment to the existing contract with Inspira will be brought to the November 18th board meeting for a vote. Excuse me. Item D, the donation of a 2005 Buick LeSabre. Scott Jensen, RPS 205 employee, has a 2005 Buick LeSabre that he would like to donate to the district's automotive program. The Kelly Blue Book value is $3,790. Students who take automotive courses have the opportunity to work on vehicles as a part of the curriculum. This donation will benefit students by allowing them to diagnose problems on actual vehicles. The donation acceptance of the 2005 Buick LeSabre will be brought to the November 2025 board meeting for a vote. We also have item E. The classroom cruiser donation acceptance. Copernicus self-regulation classroom cruiser is particularly beneficial for autism classrooms due to its thoughtful design and alignment with the needs of neurodiverse learners. The equipment supports self-regulation through movement, is ideal for sensory and kinetic learners, is designed for all students, not just those with specific needs, and enhances focus and learning readiness. Are there any questions for Mr. Barthel for the classroom cruiser donation acceptance? Okay, seeing none, the acceptance of the donation of 2 classroom cruisers will be brought to the November 18th, 2025 board meeting for a vote. We have item F, Curriculum Association iReady reading with Marshall Middle School. Gifted Academy performed academically at levels beyond that of their grade level peers. The Gifted Academy strategic plan is focused on providing students an aligned dynamic curriculum with differential rigorous learning experiences. Students still exhibit a need for a Tier 3 support in reading and time with the academic interventionists to support instructions. Are there any questions for Dr. Gallagher for the iReady Read program? Okay, seeing none. The purchase of the 60 iReady licenses will be brought to the November 18th, 2025 board meeting for a vote. Now we're going to move on to the preview of consent items. Below is a list of the consent agenda items for the Planning and Development Committee. We have item A, IFP 26-10, plumbing upgrades at 5 schools. We have item B, IFP 26-12, Jefferson High School elevator upgrades. And item C, revisions to the 2019 Auburn High School Decennial Life Safety Amendment. That completes the report for Planning and Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCall.
Mr. President.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Before you go further, I want to really quickly, and I do apologize to the board, but in performance and monitoring 5G, the CPM coaching.
Dr. Gallagher is here to answer anything about that. Yep.
Okay. So I'm really trying to, so we have in-house coaches, correct? Because the alternative choices are the traditional workshops, in-house coaching, self-paced online training. So as we discuss the budget and making cuts, why are we continuing to utilize or increase expenses when we have our capabilities?
Instructional coaches are part of the base package at the elementary level, not at the secondary level. So high schools do not have instructional coaches. So by bringing in representatives of CPM and that curriculum who are experts in that curriculum and embedding that coaching into the school day, that is a cost-effective model for being able to provide that coaching to those math teachers.
So have we really looked at the math teachers' challenges and as to why? So how long have we used companies before to coach the math teachers?
Dr. Gallagher, I don't know if you want me to take that since I wrote the executive summary. So Jefferson already has the CPM coaching pass, and now we're taking advantage of some Title II professional development grant funded money. It's not the base Fund 10 money that we're using to spend. And the math AROI, which Ms. Detman and others have shared with Christina Perry over the last few years, has determined that we will continue with our CPM curriculum. And this is based on some of the work that they've had that has determined this as a need. So it's 7 or 8 coaching sessions for up to 11 teachers for each of the other remaining high schools, as Jefferson was an early adopter. And then we also, now that all of the high schools will be doing it, we'll be having quarterly meetings with the coaching team and the lead math teacher. Not every high school has a CIL or coach, but and admin to talk about what are their impressions, what do we need to do next so that we continue to improve math. And this is a direct kind of leading activity towards the ACT scores that you brought up earlier. Like we've got to do better with math, and this is one of the things that we have determined to monitor and try.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Dr. Saltis, I'm going to provide you with a dessert on top of the lunch that I was going to get you on Friday for sticking around and being able to answer that.
All right, good. Okay. We're now at the Governance Committee. This year, the first item is the resolutions, and I guess for the IASB convention, the first thing is the IASB constitutional amendments that are being presented at the Delegates Assembly. The recommendation of the IASB's Board of Directors is to adopt the changes. Is there any discussion first on the constitutional amendments? And I don't know if you had a chance to review them. I know they were sent out. Well, we got the packet, I think, last month. I think they're kind of designed to make the organization a little more nimble, the way I was reading it anyway. Any thoughts? No thoughts. Other than the constitutional amendments, there is one resolution related to school bus safety funding. It's requesting that, it's a resolution to present to the General Assembly that would provide a source of revenue to fund a mandate that school buses be purchased, including safety belts, starting, I think, in 2031. And so the resolution asks, it's currently what they call an unfunded mandate, asks for a source of revenue to be initiated to fund that. And again, the resolutions committee recommends to adopt that resolution. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I am in support of adopting it, which is their recommendation. So in support of recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Pearson.
So we will actually make a decision at the next board meeting on what we will represent at General Assembly, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So this is time to discuss
Okay.
it, so. Ms. Bennett.
Regarding, I know we asked legal to review resolutions and all of the different proposals. Did legal have anything to comment or state in support, opposition, anything in between?
No, I didn't see any issues that I should bring to the board's attention. I thought that the request to the legislature to fund or find ways to fund their mandate was reasonable.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will, yes, we'll vote on those, on how we're going to vote on those next meeting, November 18th meeting. Moving on is the governance consent items, which include 9A, meeting minutes, 9B, facility fee waiver for Patriots Boxing Club, and 9C, freedom of information log. Any questions? Ms. Bennett.
Just one more circle back to the resolutions. Were we at this meeting or the next meeting going to officially decide our delegate for our representation?
Yes, next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, yep.
And seeing no questions on the consent items, we would be moving on to petitions and communications. I do not believe there are any people signed up to speak at this time. And with that, we are on to number 11, adjournment. I would take a motion and a second to adjourn.
One moment, please, before we adjourn. I just want clarity from Mr. Phillips, and Vice President Bennett in regards to the discussion for snow removal when we were on the attendance, because this is like 2 or 3 year old conversation back and forth. The resident is responsible for shoveling the sidewalk. So is it just a discussion, or is that an expectation that, or are we going to bring community members in on this to work with everyone on assisting, or are we going to remove the snow so our kids can get, so are we just, I guess, is it just a conversation, or is this something that we can look to happen?
So I was not aware that Ms. Bennett and Mr. Carpenter had met with the mayor and discussed this. At this point, the school district would only be responsible for what we currently are, the sidewalks around our facilities. I think what I hear Ms. Bennett say is that if our bus drivers or if anybody within the school see sidewalks that are unclean on a pathway that would be a pathway to a school, to reach out to the mayor and let him know, or the public works. Is that? Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's any path that, we have some schools like Westview that does like their walking, it's not a walking path, but their walking bus, I guess is what it's called, where everything is a bus, no matter if it's a bus or not. But they have their principal and individual staff walk to different homes or areas of homes to walk the students then to school. So for example, if those staff notice that specific sidewalks continue to not be addressed, like the city could assist in that for maybe there's various accessibility reasons, whatever the reasons are, that's not our responsibility, but we could reach out to them to make sure that that is being addressed. So our students receive safe pathways, but it's not up to us to do it, but it's the partnership that would make it happen.
Okay, so I certainly appreciate you and President Carpenter for having that conversation, but being that the conversation is like 3 years old, how can we come up with a more definitive solution to clear the path? Because we already know that that's going to be a problem, right? So can you further have a discussion on, you know, what we can do collaboratively to remove the snow? Because, I mean, the residents know that kids walk to school. So that they already know that, and the sidewalks haven't been cleared.
So I can definitely have further conversations with the Director of Public Works. I think the city always has the opportunity to impose fines, no different than they do with mowing. So I think, but I think as we talk about deficits and spending, that is not something the school district, I think, would want to take on snow removal outside of our current boundaries, but I'm happy to work with.
Correct. Yeah. So the also intention is not to start fining residents. The problem is what is the barrier in the problem, and see if the city can assist in what that is. So not imposing a fine. That's not at all what the discussion was. It was, we know there's different areas of the city that there's like not a sidewalk that needs to be built. I think 9 sidewalks potentially were built this past fiscal year in the city, for example. So what areas of RPS still need sidewalks, if so, and how can we come together to just, like, we don't have to build it, they have the funds to build it, where does it need to be built, partner, and then we move on. Same thing with snow removal. If there are consistently areas near our school that are not shoveled or plowed or whatever it is, what's the barrier to it being done, and the city to help address that, not RPS 205.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can't hear you.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We're adjourned.